Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Bothell City Council meeting for November 4th. If you join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for joining this evening, which is Election Day, which in America is a wonderful thing that we all celebrate. No matter the outcome, we all celebrate that we do have the freedom to vote, and we're looking forward to see how all turns out across the nation and here at home. So we celebrate November 4th, certainly. We have a partial council tonight. We are missing Councilmember Sandberg, who notified me that she will be late, and then Councilmember Spivey is out for a certain reason and is excused. So on to the rest of the evening. We do have the meeting agenda approval. Does everybody have the opportunity to look through it? Any changes, requests? I didn't see on here that we were going to discuss a resolution per our conversation in the last meeting. Am I just missing it? I wonder if we should add it after old business. Discuss a resolution for the health center.
Staff was under the understanding, Mayor, that that was going to come back at a future meeting rather than tonight.
Okay.
So we didn't have a resolution prepared for you in advance.
Okay. So, I mean, I think we'll hear during visitor section from a few folks in some red shirts behind you. So that is something that we can discuss at that time then.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else on the meeting agenda for this evening? Okay, seeing none, the projected agenda. Councilmember Evans, you had brought up discussion in regards to, I think, the budget.
Yes, I was, we're scheduled on November 25th for a study session on the budget. We have, I guess, public hearings on the budget on November 18th. But I was wondering if, and I checked with staff to see, and the city manager to see if this was possible, but I was wondering if we could move the study session to December 2nd, and then move actual continuation of the public hearing and budget adoption to December 9th. I know there's going to be some council members missing on November 25th, so apparently that works out with the staff scheduling and things. If, in fact, we didn't get it adopted on December 9th, we would have December 16th still as a meeting. So,
if I understood you correctly, you'd like to leave it as is on November 18th.
Correct.
Remove the item from the November 25th meeting and add it to the December 2nd meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
And then move item 13 on the December 2nd meeting to December 9th, which that's a study session, but I am assuming we could make that a regular meeting also.
Okay. What about the 16th? Okay. Okay. So what it sounds like might be best is to move from the 18th, or leave it on the 18th.
Right.
Move the item on the 25th of November to place it on the 25th, or the 2nd of December, and then move the adoption from the 2nd of December to the 16th of December. City Manager Stowe, does that work for you? That way it looks like we'll have a full council on December 16th?
Well, you certainly could adhere to that schedule or put that as a schedule, but you do run the risk, if the budget's not adopted on the 16th, of holding a meeting prior to the end of the year after the 16th in order to adopt the budget.
I'm wondering, I don't know your schedule, but is it possible to call in on the 9th? Okay. Are you opposed if we keep it on the 9th? Okay, we'll keep it on the 9th.
And to the extent that's an incentive, you can certainly always adopt the budget on the 2nd if council is so willing.
I don't see that would be a problem. See how it goes tonight.
And
yep, go ahead,
Mayor, and if December 2nd or 9th doesn't work for adoption, we do have the fallback of the 16th. So
that's right.
We'll see what happens.
Okay. Anybody else on projected agenda? Okay, so that on the 25th, that would only leave one item, and that's a meeting with the legislators. I asked the deputy mayor to take charge of that meeting because I will be out of town on that day due to Thanksgiving week. Yes?
I see the Fitzgerald sub-area is scheduled for November 18th, which is what I think the plan was. So, great, thank you.
Yes. You don't want to punt that to next year, do you? All right, moving on in the agenda, we do have a visitors section. I do have 4 sign-up sheets, and I saw a potential 5th, and we'll, of course, open it up to others after the first 5 speakers. We do limit this opportunity to address council to 3 minutes, and we always ask for your comments to be addressed to the council as a whole, not to council members individually. We look forward to hearing from you. So the first person I asked to come to the dais would, or not dais, but to the podium would be Hannah Willander. Hannah, nice to see you again. And hopefully that button is on and the little green light is.
Yes, it is. Thanks,
Perfect.
Mayor
Thank
Freed.
you.
And members of the council, thank you so much. I'm Hannah Willander with the Washington State Nurses Association. I represent the nurses who work for Seattle-King County Public Health. I wanted to read a story from one of the public health nurses who couldn't be here tonight because she's ill, and because she's a nurse, she stays home when she's ill, which is lovely. She had a patient who was a teen mom who was using drugs, living with her parents, and Carrie was able to connect her with community partners like Sound Mental Health for drug and alcohol evaluation and counseling. She received WIC at the North Shore Health Department, health care at Health Point, and help to get her into transitional housing at Friends of Youth. Her visits supported her parenting of a young infant and helped her reach her full potential to be the best mom she could be. She's now a productive person. She's working at a place that, well, let's see, I can't say where, but she's working in a food service industry, and she's now managing one of the food stores. And so that's a success story and one of many stories. So North Shore has been proposed to be closed, and satellite clinics, opening up one more satellite clinic, but I wanted to let you know that 31% of the caseload that currently is held at North Shore is from Bothell, and that's a significant number. The other numbers are Kirkland, which is 26%, Kenmore is 8%, and Woodinville and the other small cities are around 6%. So if the clinic moves to Eastgate, which we hope it will not, 800 to 1,000 people of that 2,000-person caseload will not be able to have access to services. Also, because of the transportation difficulty of getting from Bothell to Eastgate in Bellevue, it would require 2 transfers on the bus and almost $5 in bus fare. So we think that lugging a baby or 2 and a stroller, especially in this kind of weather, is not the best use of any of our parents' time. So as of today, we have been notified that Executive Constantine will be announcing tomorrow that Auburn Public Health has been saved. And we've so far saved Federal Way, White Center, and now Auburn. And we're hoping that with the help of the cities and with Councilmember Dembowski, that we can together come up with a plan to keep North Shore in this neighborhood, because this is where the services are needed very, very much. And in Kirkland last meeting, they talked a lot about how there are a lot of low-income families that live, especially in northern part of Kirkland, and how many of them, 40% of one school, they qualify for the low-income lunches. So I thank you for your support. I'm so excited to hear that you'll be presenting a resolution, and we'll be here to listen to that. Thank you.
Yes, we have a couple questions. Are you open to taking some?
Yes.
Great. Councilmember Evans.
So is there any progress at all on the north, on our facility here in our area, or is there anything moving on that, any chances of that being approved? You mentioned that they are found ways to keep the others, and so then a second question would be, how have they found ways to keep those others that we could consider in our area?
Yeah, they've found ways through partnerships with the cities. I know the City of Auburn and the Muckleshoot tribal elders have contributed money. I don't know, and I think the smaller cities in South King County have also contributed money. I know that Algona said that they were going to contribute $5,000, which to them is quite a bit. They have a population of 3,000. So I think that some of the cities have been able to come up with the funding. My understanding is that there is consideration being given to keeping North Shore Clinic where it's located currently, even though it is a huge building. The building is owned by the county. So in terms of rent and whatnot, they wouldn't have to be paying rent even if we moved them as a whole to a storefront. That's merely a rumor. I have no confirmation of such, but I'm hoping that by tomorrow I'll have some discussions with Councilmember Dembowski about the logistics of how that plan is going to fall out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, further to that, cities gave money. What amount did Auburn give?
We don't know yet.
Well, you don't know.
There's going to be a press conference tomorrow at 2:30 at Auburn City Hall.
Okay.
So I think they'll give us the numbers then.
And so what has Dow, Constantino, or Rod said to you regarding how long North Shore potentially could stay in place? Because I know they're looking for funds to try to make a stopgap.
Yeah,
Are they looking to just stay throughout the year until you find or they find a new place for the nurses or facilities to go to? What exactly is the plan?
Not sure yet. Because it's a biennial budget, the hope is that they will go for the 2 years and figure out the solution for the 2-year location of the clinic. I mean, it costs a lot of money to move people around as well, and also for clients to find services. It really deteriorates the relationship that's been built with the clients over the years. So the hope is that to keep them even if they keep them in the building, at least that's a safe place for clients to go. So we don't know exactly how that's going to work.
I think I heard you say the last time you were in that there was a potential that the building would be sold, but the services wouldn't disappear altogether. They would still be there. It is more difficult because people have to take a bus, but then tonight you said 800 people would not have access to services. Why would they not have access anymore?
There isn't enough space. And so you have, even if you have satellite clinics, you may have one provider who can see 8 to 10 people a day. And so if you don't have enough room, HealthPoint gives you one place, one room, one desk, one computer, and so you can see, you max out for appointments there. So that
no employees would lose their jobs.
No, that's correct.
So why would there still be the same amount of employees, but they would lose the ability to serve 800 people? That's what I'm trying to. Can you explain? Yeah, anybody. We're all curious. So.
Cheryl?
If you could come to the microphone so everybody in the public has the benefit of hearing what you say, that'd be great.
There actually would be a number of layoffs when Eastgate and North Shore join. There would be, I believe, 5 layoffs. And the way the merger would occur is many of the services would be moved to Eastgate, but there would be a satellite maintained at HealthPoint Bothell. But as Hannah explained, there's very limited space there, so you could house 1, maybe 2 staff people there versus the 10 providers we have at one time at North Shore.
How does Evergreen fit into this?
They don't right now.
But could they?
I believe there have been conversations with Evergreen, and those did not come to fruition.
Because they have a lot of.
They do have a lot of space.
Yes, they have.
Yeah, I think it was an issue of the cost for a lease was more than the county could afford to pay.
Even with the sale of the property, potentially.
The property belongs to King County, but not to Public Health. So Public Health is currently paying rent to be in that building, which is part of the issue with keeping that clinic open is the cost of rent and other things.
I'm confused then, because the statement before that was that we wouldn't have to pay rent because the King County owns their own building.
They are paying rent there.
Okay, my
Yeah.
bad.
Okay.
She has the facts and figures of this. So.
No, and
They-
we're just trying to get. I'm trying
Yeah,
to get to the
yeah.
bottom
So
of what
the-
the story is and making sure that we can respond appropriately. Because you've asked us to write a resolution for next time, so I want to know what we're asking for specifically, and trying to get my hands on that.
We need space.
So is that the ask in the resolution you'd like from the
Yes.
council?
Low
Is-
cost to no cost space to house the number of employees that there are now at that center is the ideal situation. There are about 20 employees
Okay.
that need space.
Do you have something already written up that you can present to our city manager, or not?
A resolution?
A resolution.
I actually emailed it to you.
Okay. You got it.
I'd be happy to email it to your city manager as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and the layoffs would occur with the professional and technical employees, Local 17, not with the WSNA members. So they are the WIC staff, nutritionists, and social workers.
Okay.
And,
So
yeah.
I got on your website today and was just reading about what services are offered. Do you mind just sharing in detail for the hearing audience as well? I mean, obviously WIC and...
Yeah, WIC services and maternity support services and infant case management, which is called First Steps. It's a Washington State program serving pregnant women and infants up to age 1. We also have in-person assisters to help folks sign up for Medicaid and other health insurance. We have interpretation services. Our MSS and ICM teams are composed of nurses, dietitians, social workers, and community health workers. And am I missing anything? Yeah, that's what's offered at that clinic at this time.
Okay. When you say maternity services, early maternity service, what does that entail?
Maternity support services are in place to help women access services. The goal of the program is to reduce low birth weight and prematurity.
Say what?
Reduce low birth weight and prematurity. So we provide services that help women access resources and medical care so that they are less likely to be.
I hear some of your other clinics are connected with Planned Parenthood. How are you connected with them?
We are not currently connected with Planned Parenthood.
Okay. And that's good news to me.
There used to be family planning services at North Shore, but those services were discontinued years ago.
Okay. Great. Any other questions? No? Great. Thank you both.
Thanks.
I don't know if you're already signed up as well to speak. You're okay.
That
I'll just go to the next. Thank you so much.
That was Cheryl Davis.
So Tracy Eichhoff? So sorry. Welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to let me come and present some of my concerns tonight. I'm a longtime resident of Bothell, and I live off of 188th Street, which is one of the main roads that go up to the high school. And I think the purpose of my visit tonight here is to get 188th on a list of for potential sidewalk placement on this street. It's one of the only roads going up to the high school that connects downtown there that doesn't have a sidewalk, and I'm very concerned about the safety of the pedestrians and bikers and also the condition of the road. I brought a couple pictures I'll just put up here, and I left some photos with Laura if anybody would like to look at them more than this. This is the width that people have to walk on.
Thank you.
Pretty much most of the year coming down the hill, and obviously if there's a storm or anything like that, it pretty much covers where we walk. I see a lot of high school kids walking 3 abreast on the wrong side of the road. It's just kind of not very safe, I don't think. So anyway, that's my petition tonight, is to get us on a list for a sidewalk. I know we've been part of King County for forever until February when that street was annexed into the city of Bothell. So I just appreciate you taking the time to hear my concerns, and hopefully something good can come of it.
Perfect. We have a question from Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. And this isn't really so much a question, but I place a high priority on getting sidewalks on streets that lead up to schools, and I think that's something that's important. I appreciate you raising that to us.
Thank you.
Both of the sides of that street appear to be relatively undeveloped, and so I think what I'd ask our staff to take a look at is a potential of sort of a latecomers agreement or something like that when they develop, because the developer would be required to put in curb, gutter, and sidewalk going up there to sort of tag that onto that property and do that. But I think that's a good priority, and I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. And acknowledging as well that it was recently annexed in, so it's
Right.
something that's relatively new to our plate.
Right. And part of the a sidewalk does go up about 1/3 of the way up when they redid everything there, but I don't know about the rest of it. So thank you.
Nice to see you. Next person on our sign-up sheet is Terry Herman. Terry, thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much for letting me speak. Obviously, I'm here to help save North Shore.
Yes, I see a common theme.
My name is Terry. I live in Bellevue, and I'm a registered nurse working for public health. I want to tell you what I do in maternity support services, like we just heard from Hannah and Cheryl. I visit pregnant women, new mothers, and infants in their homes. I love my work. I care about my clients. I am really privileged to be a support to all kinds of mothers, healthy ones, unhealthy, married, unmarried, working, stay at home, happy, anxious, sober, addicted, depressed, homeless, refugee moms, preemie moms, twin moms, moms with miscarriages, moms with chronic health problems, and moms who are involved with Child Protective Services. Many of the women I work with do not speak English, do not drive, and all of them have financial challenges. Last week, I just made my last home visit with a 29-year-old client, I'll call her Emily, and her 6-month-old baby boy. Emily is married, her husband works, they also have a school-aged daughter. I was referred to Emily about 9 months ago because she was having overwhelming anxiety and deep depression in her pregnancy. When I met her, Emily was shaking, restless, hyperventilating, hypertensive, and had difficulty focusing and looking me in the eye. Her husband couldn't leave her alone because she was hopeless and just in a very bad state. Emily and I met about every 2 to 4 weeks and focused on getting her connected with counseling, appropriate psychiatric medications, blood pressure monitoring, and providing accurate information and reassurance to her. I encouraged her to breastfeed her infant because the research shows that breastfeeding creates better bonding and can reduce depression in new moms. Emily's baby is now 6 months old, and Emily is back to work part-time. She is still breastfeeding her healthy baby. She continues in counseling and is down to only 1 psychiatric medication, which is working well for her. She does not have panic attacks now. She's exercising daily, and she told me that she is feeling back to normal. She even told me that she probably doesn't need me to come to her home anymore, which was great news to me. I'm here tonight to oppose the closure of North Shore Public Health Center in Bothell because they provide extra support to women like these. It is really important that we continue to do this in this area. It's hard for women to get all the way to Eastgate. Please write a resolution to King County opposing the closure and support continuing services in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yes, appreciate your heart for sure. It's a beautiful one. Thank you, Terry. And I did talk to Dal, Constantine, and Rod today. We actually met and discussed this issue, so they are continuing to work on it. So we're met collectively to see what can happen. Luan, and I cannot see what the last name might be. And I have your address for the record.
819 Meadow Road, Linwood, Washington, 98087.
Perfect.
My name's Luann Cunningham. I work as a registered nurse for Seattle-King County Public Health. I work out of the North Shore office in Bothell. I've worked for public health for 26 years. I'm the only original staff that moved from the old office in Bellevue to our North Shore office. When we moved here, we had 5 public health nurses doing home visits in the maternity support services and infant case management program, and now I'm the only one due to budget cuts. I cover the area of Bothell and Kenmore. That was my original area, and now I go out to Redmond, Kirkland, Carnation, and Duval, and Woodinville. If they close the building, I'm going to be out at Bellevue, and that means I have to come from Bellevue out here, and that's going to increase my travel time and cut the services I provide to families. I'd like to share a story of a recent referral I got from Evergreen Hospital. I received my referrals from Evergreen Hospital, Overlake Hospital, and our WIC MSS staff mainly. A recent referral from Evergreen Hospital involved a woman who delivered a premature baby. After visiting the woman with her new baby in her home, I realized she had a 3-year-old son who was born premature. He spoke only a few words. I helped the mother apply for a developmental eval for her 3-year-old through the North Shore School District. He will soon be receiving developmental services through the North Shore School District preschool. Without my home visits, this child would probably enter kindergarten well behind his peers due to the lack of early intervention services. The mother did not know how to apply for Head Start, and his health care provider did not pick up that he was developmentally delayed, despite being on SSI, which is for babies and children that are disabled. Due to transportation problems and lack of bus service in the area, they have still not gotten on WIC. I hope you support us in, keeping us at a curbside location or some location down here, because if you don't, the families that you see in Bothell in the area, they won't be able to be seen as much. I just can't travel all around. Thank you.
Luann, thank you so much for coming this evening. I appreciate it. Next on the sign-up sheet is Sandy Gwynn. Sandy, nice to see you this evening.
Good evening, Mayor Freed, council members. Will you still have on tonight's agenda the legislative priorities, or has that been moved?
No, we actually will have that on here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm talking about that tonight with a request. Adjacent is a very innocent-sounding word that has a huge financial impact to Bothell residents. Currently, Bothell Council is looking at ways to change our fire department from a city fire department to a larger regional fire district. They are looking at a voter-approved regional fire authority or a formation of regional fire authority after annexation. Example of this: City of Bothell could be annexed by North Shore Fire District, Woodinville Fire District, or Snohomish 10 Fire District. This then could be followed by a merger of the various fire districts into one fire district, or they could form a regional fire authority. And the third way that they're looking at is contract for services. And this was discussed, as Councilmember Evans knows, at the October 10th Regional Fire Authority meeting. Under state law, in order for the first two to occur, voter-approved fire authority or the formation of the regional fire authority after annexation, the jurisdictions must be adjacent. The City of Bothell is surrounded by fire districts, and the RFA is that we're involved in with the planning committee. We're the only city. And I'm not wanting to get into other jurisdictions' business, but that adjacent forces me to look at the whole. The fire districts have a tax assessment on their tax bill for fire district services. City of Bothell residents do not see that on their tax bill. If we were to go to this larger regional fire authority or through a one large fire district, Bothell residents would be the only one that would have that additional new charge added onto their property tax bill. I'm asking that when you discuss your legislative priorities tonight, that you request the state, since they write the state laws that put this in, to find a way to remove the adjacent. So if the fire districts want to form one large RFA, they're welcome to, but don't require the city to bear that burden. And also, if any of those processes require or do not require the vote of the people, it should be amended to include that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Anybody else from the public wish to address council this evening? Just by a show of hands. Mr. Bellasi, if you come forward. And just state your name for the record, even though we know who you are. Some people might like to know in the public.
Well, thank you. The name is Ernie Bellisi. I live at 2614 242nd Street. And as you know, a couple months ago, you appointed me and 5 others to 2 committees for this bond levy that we hopefully will put behind us tonight. One way or the other, the voters are doing that. But as spokesperson for one committee, I was requested to gather information, and I know the other side had to do the same, gather information, and everything came from our city clerk, Laura Hathaway. And I just want to give a thank you to you for all the information that you provided for us in a very timely manner, professional manner, and I'm sure it helped both sides gather the information for their statements on this bond levy. So thank you, Laura. That's it.
Thank you for saying that. I had the impression, actually, that we were withholding information and not being as clear from your campaign, so that's very good to hear. Thank you for being a man of honor and doing that. Thank you. Next on the agenda is...
Mr. Mayor, might I have an opportunity to address the issue that was raised on the public health tonight before we move on to the next item? So I just wanted to say I really appreciate the voices that have come out tonight in support of public health. I had the opportunity to serve as a chair of the Snohomish Health District, and I also had an opportunity when I was in high school to be a public health volunteer in the Dominican Republic. And I think that a lot of people don't understand that public health is as integral to the infrastructure of our country as transportation or criminal justice or anything else. And when we have large and sort of sensational stories about an outbreak like Ebola, what people forget is that our first line of defense against not just caring for sort of the people who are most in need in our community, but also against infectious diseases and their spread is in public health. So I very much appreciate the work that you have done. I also had an opportunity to speak with Councilmember Dembowski, and I know that he's working very, very hard on behalf of the citizens of his district and fighting for your jobs and for our public health in this district. And I know that he is working very hard to make sure that that continues, and I will absolutely support this resolution. I'm a little uncomfortable with the proposal from the executive to transfer the financial responsibility to municipalities from what is a fundamental and core purpose of our county government. And I'm deeply concerned that that pattern of, because I've served on this council long enough to have seen that played out several times when it came to our public pools, when it came to the North Shore Senior Center and other items. They would say, well, if the cities could just help us a little bit this year, we'll be able to keep it open. And then in a year, it becomes 100% of the city's responsibilities. So I am absolutely supportive of public health. I think the county needs to fund public health at a full level to be able to provide safety and security to not only people who are in desperate need of your services, but also the entire community, because the work that you do benefits everybody. But I am concerned about the sort of slow attempt to push down financial responsibility for a core purpose of county government. And I look forward to supporting your efforts to make the county stand up and take responsibility for what is a really important purpose.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anybody else have any comments on this? Councilmember Evans.
Well, just to add to that, we're also seeing, and we have an item on our agenda tonight, that the county is pushing down court procedures down to the local level, which we don't have the funding or the manpower to do that. So the county has a history of trying to push things off on the cities, and so while we're very supportive of that, we also have to be aware of the services that we provide now to our residents. But it's certainly a worthy cause that we'll be looking at. But it's, again, I think Councilmember Lamb brings up a good point that we got to be a little bit careful of things coming our way without any funding attached to it. So, but thank you.
Yeah, and on compounding on top of that, we have a state legislature who likes to take our tax revenue out of our city to use it for their own budget shortfalls because they can't get creative. So there's my personal opinion. Do you have any comments? I thought you nodded my way.
Sure, I definitely support, especially doing a support measure to keep the facility open at North Shore. This was brought up a bit at the Sound Cities Association, which is a group of cities that get together and meet once a month. And from what I understand, it is just a stopgap measure. It's not an ongoing, we pick up the North Shore health center and carry it for the rest of the time. It was I don't want to paraphrase what was said, but it was basically a bit of an oversight, I guess, on the revenues versus expenditures for your guys' specific budget. So, yeah, I hope that we can help you guys out and figure out a way to keep the doors open there. You guys do fantastic work for people that absolutely need the help. So that's it.
Great. Thank you, Council. So we were on consent agenda. Nothing got pulled. Is there a motion?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Agnew, a second by Councilmember Lamb for the consent agenda, which includes items A, B, and C with no changes. Everybody can place their vote. Clerk can display. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So passes unanimously with Councilmember Spivey and Sandberg absent and excused. Next item on the agenda is AB 14166 to consider adoption of the city's 2015 legislative priorities. Our city attorney, Joe Beck, is here for the presentation. Joe, nice to see you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The item on the agenda tonight, as the Mayor stated, is to consider the approval of the city's 2015 legislative priorities. At the last meeting, there was a consensus of Council to make some tweaks to these top legislative priorities. Just as a reminder, we've taken a more lean and mean approach to our legislative priorities this year, and by that we're trying to pare them back so that they have the maximum impact and we can really focus on the top priorities. This is in line with the recommendations that AWC issues on these, on drafting these things and on having maximum punch when we go up to the legislature. What I've done in response to Council's direction is we've removed the explicit support for the AWC top legislative priorities while recognizing that we do support those. There's been no statement from Council that we wouldn't support those. But we've removed it as a listed priority and replaced it with a priority that discusses the Public Works Trust Fund and our support for continued funding of that source of funds for the city. And then there was also a mention of adding some other funds. I believe it was RCO grant funds, and we did, and I explained in the AB, we did some research on that, and we looked at it, and basically staff came to the conclusion that those are not under threat. And so our recommendation is to adopt the legislative priorities as presented tonight with Transportation Improvement Board funding, Model Toxic Control Act funding, Public Works Trust Fund, and then funding and legislation to address the rapidly expanding burden and costs of municipal criminal prosecution as our top legislative priorities to take to the legislature this year. In addition, today the city manager received a request from Kelly Snyder at the University of Washington Bothell asking that the council be supportive or state some support for the city for the UW Bothell's capital request for $500,000 for the pre-design of a new academic building. In the past, the city has supported UW Bothell and their projects as being in the city's best interest. And we did not include those explicitly this year as part of our legislative priorities, again, in an attempt to maintain a lean and impactful set of legislative priorities. But I think it would be appropriate for council, either by consensus or as part of the motion tonight, to reaffirm our support of the University of Washington Bothell if the council still feels that way, and I assume that it does. And that would allow the city to continue to support those this particular item that the University of Washington Bothell has requested us to support. We could even go so far as the city manager could issue a letter on the council's behalf in support of that particular priority, which then the University of Washington Bothell could use in whatever way they needed to support their efforts. But that's a simple thing that can be done as part of your motion with regard to adopting these legislative priorities tonight, and it will allow us to maintain a streamlined legislative priority set of legislative priorities to present to the legislature as we move forward. A reminder that we do have our first district legislators coming to meet with us on November 25th, and that'll be an excellent opportunity for us to really get down into the details and be able to speak with them and present our priorities and to hear from them what they see happening in the legislature this year. So I just wanted to remind you of that opportunity that's upcoming, and that's my presentation.
Great, thank you so much, Joe. Does anybody have any questions for our city attorney, Councilmember Evans?
And maybe the city manager can answer this better, but are the model toxic control funding, is that in jeopardy? I know it's a program that we're very dependent on right now, but is there discussion that those funds could go away?
Could have our Public Works Director be able to better provide a response to that question.
Okay.
Historically, there has been some redirection of funds from that account into other areas of the state budget. So our request is to keep the model toxics funding in the ecology budget for cleanup instead of sweeping it into other areas.
Right, and it's a program very important to us right now with our downtown cleanup. These aren't ranked in any order of priority. I know that issues come up before. They're all priorities as far as we're concerned. But the TIB and the Public Works Trust Fund, we're going to be joined by many, many cities requesting in support of that. So the legislature, I'm sure, is going to hear that. The one, as I was reviewing this material, that, as I mentioned earlier, that I'm really see as a concern to us is this funding and legislation to address our rapidly expanding cost and burden of municipal criminal prosecution. I don't know if a legislator looks at this list and thinks that the first one is our top priority, but again, I think the TIB and the Public Works Trust Fund will certainly get a lot of support from everybody. But I'm really concerned about these criminal costs in our court and the huge impact that could have on us. And then the other question I have is, I can't remember if we discussed, I mean, I'm sure again the AWC is going to be requesting to replace the liquor control taxes that come back to us and getting some of that excise tax from the marijuana. But I don't see that listed there. Is that part of our of the AWC list that we'll be recommending?
Yeah, it is part of the AWC legislative priorities. It is rolled into the bullet point on funding and legislation to address the burden and cost of municipal criminal prosecution. So we address that privatization of liquor and legalization of recreational marijuana is contributing to this issue. And then if you read the fine print on the third page, we do address that issue directly within that narrative there. And certainly it would be my intent to make sure that you know how it works. We get to talk to various people, and these things get the emphasis that we give them as staff and elected representatives. And so certainly the order, I don't think, has any impact on how we present these things, these various bullets, and certainly in face-to-face meetings we'll have the opportunity to make a presentation that's impactful with regard to this issue and to raise each of the underlying issues that we address in our narrative.
And you don't think we need a separate bullet on the liquor tax revenues and the marijuana tax? I mean, it's kind of buried in the legislation for criminal prosecution, but You know,
Well-
and again, I'm sure that's a high priority for all the cities. We're going to continue to ask for that, like we do the TIB and the Public Works Trust Fund. But
And that was the thinking. My original draft had those as separate bullets, but the thinking is that is one of the few number of AWC. That's one of their main priorities that they have out front and center, and so the idea was that we would roll that into the bullet that we've adopted here, which is more. It's intended to get more specifically at the issue that we have here in the city of Bothell, from staff's perspective at least, and that with the liquor privatization fund, liquor privatization and the marijuana taxes and the share of those revenues being one element of this large issue.
so so we're not going to necessarily list here in a bullet our support of the AWC legislation or platform or what. But that will be included in our comments with them and that type of thing. Is that the plan?
That was the consensus of council at the last time we discussed this. Would be how we would approach it, and so I revised these according to that consensus and and if council adopts these tonight, given the discussion that we've had with council, I would certainly feel comfortable telling our legislators that we support the AWC legislative priorities as well as our own.
And Mayor, I would be in support of requesting the $500,000 or expressing our support for that for the college building.
As a bullet point 5?
Yes. Sure. Well, however, you talked about putting it in the form of a letter or whatever the case may be. Whatever format it goes in, I supporting that issue, bringing that issue to the legislature's attention.
Okay, great. Thank you, Councilmember Lamb.
Joe, thanks a lot for your work on this. I really appreciate it, and I support the legislative priorities. I would concur with Councilor Evans and Mayor Freed to add a fifth bullet point being the support of the University of Washington Bothell. The Bothell City Council has always made the University of Washington Bothell's priorities a part of our legislative priorities, and I think the work that we have done as a council with our legislators on that has had a huge impact on the growth of that campus as well as the growth of our city. And I think that very few things are as important for the economic development of our city as a healthy and growing University of Washington Bothell campus. And so I would support having that go there as well as a fifth bullet point.
Do we have specific language? I know it emailed to me, but I can't get it on my iPad here.
The specific language that was recommended by Ms. Snyder is the City of Bothell supports UW Bothell's request for capital investment for an academic building to continue the efforts of providing greater access to higher education.
Okay. It's just maybe a sentence or two long.
We can,
yeah,
and if that's council's wish, we certainly can add that verbatim as a fifth bullet.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Rayum.
I'm in favor of the addition of the fifth bullet, but I wanted to go back to the funding and legislation to address rapidly expanding burden and cost of municipal criminal prosecution. I read the sentence or the description just doesn't make sense to me. So I have one question. So some cities don't have their own court system or their own court. So are they at those courts where cities pay into using them, like the East Side Court in Redmond? Are they having the same experience where they're refusing to do prosecution on felony cases?
Yeah, it's the same. Yes, it's the same issue for every city and town in King County and Snohomish County, and I suspect Pierce County as well, but I know Snohomish County and King County, where the county prosecuting standards have been gradually ratcheted down to the point that they're just not charging certain crimes that are felonies, and those crimes are more complex crimes, and those are falling on all cities and towns. Every city and town has the duty to prosecute misdemeanors and gross misdemeanors within their borders. How they do it, whether by contract or otherwise, varies from city and town, from city to city. But it's the same impact, so that whatever court is handling within the district courts, just to give you a brief glimpse of how it works, within the district courts that do contract with cities, they have municipal departments. And so there's still a city court going on in that, even though it's happening in a district court building. And those courts are feeling the impact of this. Those prosecutors for those cities are feeling the impact of this. The public defenders for those cities are feeling the impact of this. And so it's just it's a burgeoning problem.
So there's a group of felony citations that people are essentially getting out of because they're not being prosecuted, or they just kind of sit on a shelf and they'll prosecute them?
No, they are a couple of different things happen. Police have been told, we will not charge these, do not send them to us. And so police simply do not charge what would have been a felony crime, or they are declined, which any prosecutor has the right to do. They're declined and sent back, not because of insufficient evidence or anything like that. They're just declined because they don't rise high enough to the level for the county to act on them for budgetary reasons, we're told. And so then they come back, and the police department has nothing to do but to refer those then to their municipal court for hopefully some charge, lesser charge, because we can't charge the felonies. We have to come up with an attempted, let's say it's a drug case. Instead of a drug charge, it's an attempted drug charge.
Do you have other examples? Is it just drug charges, or are we talking about violent crime?
Oh, yeah, there are levels for, they try, I will say this, they do try to skew it towards the property crimes are the ones that they don't charge more so. Some drug type charges. They tend to try to charge the violent crimes more so than if they have to make a choice. I mean, it's not. I'm not accusing the county of being indifferent to their duty or indifferent to the issues that are out there, but in their mind, they're making budgetary decisions, but those budgetary decisions have real impacts on our courts and on our prosecutors and on our public defenders.
Okay. So I was trying to reword what you had here. So if we took off the beginning of it and just said, county, due to financial constraints, county prosecutors refuse to prosecute many felony crimes, does that mess it up for you, or is that, and then just period? And then I don't know what to do with the rest of this, but it doesn't seem to line up much with the underlying beginning of the priority, or the legislative priority.
The attempt is to fold in several different elements, and it does make it slightly compound and awkward, but that's sometimes the format that we're dealing with here.
Reem, I had a shot at redrafting that if you wanted to hear it.
Yeah, I'm at a loss of how to fix it.
So what I was saying is cities are facing increasing prosecutorial burdens and a crisis of funding due to county prosecutors refusing to prosecute many felony crimes, period. This is compounded by increasingly stringent public defense standards, privatization of liquor, and legalization of recreational marijuana.
That sounds great. Can we have it that way?
That's certainly fine with me.
All right, that's it. Thanks.
Does that sound okay, Joe?
That's certainly fine with me.
Perfect. Councilmember Agnew?
Yeah, I too am in support of the legislative priorities as long as we had the UW Bothell campus in there.
Great. Well, I'm certainly in support of adding the fifth bullet in there, and certainly the language change that Councilmember Lamb came up with. So it sounds like that's good.
So I'm prepared to make a motion if
Please do.
that's okay. So I would move adoption of the city legislative priorities with the following two changes, as presented by staff with the following two changes. Bullet point 4 would read, the title would be the same. The text would be, cities are facing increasing prosecutorial burdens and a crisis of funding due to county prosecutors refusing to prosecute many felony crimes. This is compounded by increasingly stringent public defense standards, privatization of liquor, and legalization of recreational marijuana, period. And then a fifth bullet point supporting the University of Washington Bothel's request per the email that we received.
Great. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor can say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Passes unanimously with Councilmember Sandberg and Spivey absent and excused. Thank you so much, Joe. Next item on the agenda is AB 14167. Consider approval of 25-cent educational and governmental access fee per month for cable subscribers. Great.
Good evening,
Kathy
Mayor and
Ozer,
Council.
nice to see you.
Nice to see you. So pretty much the information is in there. Some information that is not in that AB is what other cities are currently charging this fee as well. So Kirkland, Marysville, Mount Lake Terrace, Redmond, Shoreline, and Woodinville all charge the EG fee ranging from 15 cents in Shoreline to 75 cents per subscriber per month in Marysville. So our equipment is in desperate need of being replaced. We don't want to move it to the new city hall. It probably won't survive the move. So tonight we're asking you to give the city manager direction to go ahead and send a written request to the two cable companies, Comcast and Frontier, to add this to the subscribers' bills, 25 cents per month per subscriber. Questions?
Councilmember Evans.
We currently contract for this service. Is that correct for the public TV or?
It's negotiated in the franchise agreements with the cable companies.
But I mean, we don't have city employees that do this. We actually contract with somebody to.
Right. We have Tim Smith,
Right.
Media Services, who.
And we provide the equipment to him, and he operates the program. So is it possible that he could include the equipment in his contract and we would just pay it through a contract, assuming we still have to find the revenue to pay the contract, I guess, but 25 cents doesn't sound like very much, but it's an additional fee to the users and the taxpayers, and so I guess one option would be to have Tim provide this and include it in his contract, and we would increase his contract, I would think. It would be one option, potentially. And then the next question I have, the listing of equipment and the costs and things we received here, is this something that we will bid out, this equipment, or is there a one sole source provider on this, or is it something we'll bid out?
We will bid out. It will likely come in less than the $181,000.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anyone else?
So I had a follow-up question for Kathy along the lines of what Councilmember Evans was asking. When are those contracts up to? I mean, would we have the ability prior to moving to the new city hall to negotiate those contracts, or no?
Both of those franchise agreements expire in 2018.
So we don't have the ability to
No.
renegotiate those before. So
No.
this is why we're doing it. And effectively, likely what they would do anyways is just pass along the cost to
Right.
to the ratepayers.
Right. It's just a pass.
That's kind of what was my thought. All right.
Anyone else? Councilmember Ram.
So yeah, the equipment is pretty bad. When I watch the videos, it's just not very good quality. So I'm in support of getting new equipment. I struggle with my question is, how come we didn't consider this as part of building the city hall? Like, we probably didn't need to specify we needed a heating and cooling system, just like in the council chambers we needed a camera system. So how come that wasn't just part of the project?
Actually, it is considered as part of the FF&E, but budgeting for it, we have another mechanism that we wanted to explore, and this was one that we wanted to bring forward to council.
Well, did you have? Could you explain the other funding mechanism?
Well, there's this would supply about $27,000 over or annually. Other mechanisms could be to fund the immediate need of the equipment, could be through the contingency fund for the city hall, but we really don't want to do that because we don't know what all in the future we will need that contingency fund for. Another may be some form of an asset replacement, but it's, in any case, we need to, whether we fund this equipment now, we do need to start building a fund for replacement of that equipment.
Another way to look at this, regardless whether or not we went forward with the City Hall, the need for replacing this equipment would still have been present.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Tammy, can I ask Tammy to, do you mind if Tammy has something to say?
Just want to make sure that everybody is aware that the equipment that we have currently was purchased by the utility, the cable. It's a pretty normal practice to do this and to provide that service to our citizens with the BCTV. So without this equipment, we would not have BCTV. We would not have the ability to function. And again, the equipment was originally paid for by the cable companies, and the idea is they collect 25 cents and provide that then to the city in order to maintain that equipment and replace it when it needs to be replaced. So this is really something that has happened in the past here, and that we're asking to continue in order to make sure that in the future we can maintain equipment at a level that is better than what we have today. This equipment is, I believe, 15 years old, and that just doesn't keep up with the industry standards. So
I have a feeling that 3 iPhones would do a better job stuck on little tripods in the corner.
I'm not going to comment on that one, but anyway, this is this is part of the franchise agreement. It was actually enacted within the franchise agreement, and we're just asking to implement that fee so we can collect these monies and make sure that the future equipment is replaced by the cable companies.
You okay?
That's it. Yep.
No further questions? Is there a motion?
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any conversation?
I'll speak in favor of the motion. So I appreciate staff doing this. I also appreciate, because I believe technically this didn't have to be brought back to council, and I appreciate staff recognizing that and making the decision to brief this issue and to bring it to council for consideration. I think BCTV, despite its perhaps depressingly low ratings at times, is an important public service, and I think it's important, particularly now that it's on video, that our citizens have the ability to access that online, and having quality equipment to be able to capture our meetings and to be able to rebroadcast those is part of the transparency that we support as a council and part of the process of bringing our citizens closer to the government. So Kathy, thanks for your work on this, and I'll be supporting the motion.
Any further comments, Councilmember Evans?
I'll be supporting the motion also. I'm amazed at the number of people who watch our council meetings, and it is
amazing.
It is. But I'm glad they do, and I'm glad that we provide that service to them. It is part of them being involved or aware of what's going on in local government. So I wish this is something that we could get the cable companies to pay for, but apparently that's not an option. And so if this fee is small and compared to other cities, what they're charging, so I think it's important that we continue to provide the service, and this revenue will help do that.
Great. Councilmember Am?
So I am in support of getting new camera equipment, but I'm not going to support this. I don't think it's right to put 25 cents on every cable subscriber's bill to install new equipment in a city hall, a brand new city hall that we're building that didn't have it specified. So I wish there was a different way that we could have looked at paying for this.
Councilmember Agnew?
I will be supporting the motion. I want to thank Kathy for all the work that you've done in this. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So we're going to try our technology now and try to use the automated voting system again. If everybody can place their vote, and if the clerk can display, it works. Passes 4-1 with Councilmember Sandberg and Spivey absent and excused. Thank you, Kathy. Next item on the agenda is AB 14168 to consider approval of the 2015 Visitor Development Spending Plan. One of the most exciting items on the agenda tonight is presented by Assistant City Manager Peter Churdson. Nice to see you, Peter.
Good evening, Mayor Freed, council members. I'm pleased to bring the 2015 Visitor Development Spending Plan before you for your review and approval. It's been reviewed by the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee and has met with their approval. Unfortunately, none of them are here with us tonight, but they put a little bit of effort into taking a good look at that. As you know, lodging tax revenues are restricted in their use and can only be used for promotion of tourism or construction and operation of tourism-related facilities. So the 2015 spending plan supports 5 overarching objectives. First is exploring linkages with the City of Bothel's economic development initiatives that can create a long-term draw to the region. The second is growing hotel stays during the seasons when the hotels are slowest. That would be the fall, winter, and spring, early spring. Third, expanding awareness and creating a draw to Bothell through targeted outreach and messaging. Fourth, identifying and targeting new audience segments and markets to broaden Bothel's exposure. And then fifth, to encourage repeat visitation, to bring back guests who come and visit during the summer and have them come back during the what they call the shoulder seasons. I won't go through the whole plan, but significant initiatives in addition to the tried and true partnerships with the Woodinville Wine Country include some of the following. The ExploreBothell.com website needs to be overhauled. Let's see if that's not about there. We'd like to begin this design overhaul. The website's 5 years old, more than 5 years old. It's built on outdated technology, a restrictive content management system, and it's not mobile friendly. And it should be updated to reflect how users wish to interface with the site and to support current and future promotion strategies. This would be a 2-year effort done in 2 phases, with early planning beginning in 2015 and a launch of the new components later next year. The second phase will roll out in early 2016. And this effort will also be linked to our Bothell Online effort, which is seeking to modernize the city's presence on social media and online. Okay, you'll also see next down, well, I won't even move the pen because it's kind of pointing at the same line, but the tourism coordinator. We've proposed reactivating a communications officer, also known as a public information officer for the city, with a little bit of a twist. Given the overlapping skills and qualifications that these 2 jobs would require, this person who fills the role as communications officer could also serve on a part-time basis as a tourism coordinator. The plan sets aside $46,000 to fund this position on a part-time basis, and the incumbent would serve primarily as the city's communications officer, and then the lodging tax fund would be billed for those activities undertaken in support of visitor promotion. And those visitor promotion responsibilities would include guiding the development of tourism marketing programs, consulting with tourism and marketing partners, managing the visitor promotion budget, and administering the City of Bothell's tourism website. The city's contract with Red Propeller could consequently be reduced by at least 20 to 30% with the implementation of that position. And then finally, I'll call out the support for the Bothell Beer Festival. Building on a pretty successful festival this year, the hope is to expand that in the fall of 2015 to promote weekend getaways to Bothell, and that would translate into overnight stays at hotels. And the last thing I'd just bring out, just as an interesting point, Amy Spain, who came down here from Snohomish County several weeks ago, sponsored a session last week in which we were updated on efforts to build the Washington Tourism Alliance, which is meant to take the place of the state-run organization that was disbanded a couple of years ago. And we will definitely be partners or members of that. And you'll see down third line from the bottom, down here, memberships. That's one of the reasons for the increase in that line. And that's all I have for you this evening.
Great. Thank you so much, Peter. Any questions from council? Councilmember Evans?
Thank you, Peter. This is a good program, and it is. These funds are required to be spent in the tourism industry, and I've worked with this committee several years in the past, and I think they do a great job. Just a couple of questions on the budget. I noticed in here the hotel lobby kiosk that's been removed. That was a program that we talked about. Did it not ever get off the ground, or did they just find that they weren't working?
No, it got off the ground, but one of the significant obstacles is that the hotels have very stringent branding requirements, and they were not about to allow really anything in their lobbies that didn't fit with their corporate branding effort. So it could be done in bed and breakfast, but even the bed and breakfast, I don't think, are supportive of that.
So these kiosks aren't in the hotel.
I'll have to find out how many of those hotels do have that. And get back to you.
And then the other question is on the PIO, where half of that position will be dedicated to or funded by the tourism fund, and so I was looking, as I was looking through the budget, it said that would be a revenue neutral position, which I'm assuming means there's revenue coming to offset that. So I was, and I think it was listed at $46,000 or something in the budget.
Right.
So I was looking, is there a $46,000, where is the decrease in the Red Peller contract?
You won't, in this budget, you won't see a decrease in that. And that is, it will be decreased. It's a question of how much, as those roles are fleshed out, what can the tourism coordinator take on that Red Propeller is currently doing. And some of the things that tourism coordinator will take on are not necessarily being done by Red Propeller. They're kind of a strategic direction for the program. But Red Propeller can then back down a little bit from the overall coordination, and they can just provide the support services that they do so well at.
We did have a full-time coordinator position in this several years ago, and we had to cut that during the recession and some of those things. So I think it's good to have that come back.
And I might clarify that we say half-time or 50%, but that's a rough estimate, and really to be on the straight and narrow, we will have to be very careful about billing those hours from the one position to the lodging tax fund.
Right.
Because
those hours that's billed out of this budget will have to be directly related to tourism, right? So, okay, great, thank you.
Other further questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Rame.
It's not really a question, but I enjoy going to the beer festival. I think you did a great job, and it was really fun.
How were you able to get a ticket? Interesting.
It's yeah.
There, just to update the listening public, I believe 800 people attended this event. We turned away 300.
The numbers we turned away are kind of fuzzy, but around that amount.
I did have to pull rank to get in there. I said I had a meeting with Peter. So
wonderful. Thank you. So is there a motion?
So, Mayor, I would move to approve the 2015 Visitor Development Spending Plan.
Second. So we have a motion by Councilmember Evans, second by Councilmember Lamb. Any discussion? Seeing none, if everybody could place their vote. And the clerk display passes unanimously with Councilmember Sandberg and Spivey absent and excused. Thank you, Peter. Next item on the agenda is AB 14169, consider adoption of a resolution revising Personnel Policy Chapter 6.1, revising definition of domestic partner and providing incentives to non-representative employees to enroll in the city's high-deductible health plan with associated health savings account. And Jamie Marston, our Human Resource Director, is here. Jamie, nice to see you.
Good evening, and thank you. Tonight before you is a resolution, as you stated, for your consideration to revise the health benefits for non-representative employees. In 2018, the current medical plan for non-representative employees will be going away. So in consideration of that, and in looking forward to that date happening, the recommendation is to give some incentives to the non-reps to make a switch to the high deductible health plan, which is a much lower premium. That plan has an associated health savings account, which helps the employee pay for out-of-pocket expenses, and the savings of moving from the Health First plan to the high deductible health plan, the premium savings would be used to fund the health savings account. That currently the high deductible health plan has a out-of-pocket expense for employees only of the individual only of $5,000, and for a family of $10,000. So they need to have that health savings account to help them pay for the potential that they might hit that maximum out-of-pocket. The plan also it recommends that the contributions of the city be higher in 2015 and to be reduced over the next 3 years and become a match by 2018. This would incentivize employees to move sooner rather than later to this plan to help them build their health savings account. This is voluntary movement, so they could stay with the Health First plan until 2018 or make the choice to move over sooner. I hope that you consider this. The recommendation is to move forward with this change, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Thanks so much, Jamie. Other questions from council?
I have a couple.
Great. Councilmember Lamb.
Jimmy, thank you so much for your work on this. I really appreciate the thoughtfulness and attention to what is coming down the pike that you have presented in this. And so as I understand it, and just correct me if I'm wrong, under Obamacare, certain health care plans are considered sort of too generous to the plan members, and they're then called Cadillac plans, meaning Cadillac because it's a nice car, and so it's a nice plan, and so under Obamacare they penalize plans that are too generous to employees. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so our non-represented employees are subject to this provision of Obamacare, but public employees who are members of a labor union are exempted from this provision of Obamacare. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct.
But
all of our employees will be, and all of our plans will have to be addressed at some point.
But we have to do that through the collective bargaining process.
That's correct, and we have been getting clauses within the contracts to allow us to discuss and make changes to health plans where those plans might be subject to the Cadillac plan.
Okay.
To the Cadillac.
And so, in effect, what your proposal has done is look down the road to this time of 18 and say, let's get people so that we don't have sort of a dramatic transition in a single year where your plan would go from being very good to being not a Cadillac, maybe a Pinto plan after that we want to incentivize people to sort of incrementally make that change in advance to minimize disruption and to sort of maximize the city's ability to handle this.
That's correct.
Okay.
A proactive approach.
All right. I appreciate that, and thanks for your explanation.
Councilmember Evans.
To follow up on what Councilmember Lamb mentioned, so the Health First plan is being eliminated completely from the AWC plan. Is that correct?
That's correct, because the AWC Employee Benefits Trust has determined that plan will be declared a Cadillac plan by 2018.
Because I was on the Health First plan and I got the letter, I had to go off of that plan now, I think starting in this year. So as part of the AWC program, another health plan that I was on. So I guess it is related to the Obamacare issue that it would be considered a Cadillac, but they're dumping it. But So there is an advantage to the city, too, to have these employees sign up, because the premium's going to go down for what the city has to pay. And for that benefit, we're giving them the opportunity to begin their bank, so to say, to help offset the costs, the deductible costs of $5,000 or $10,000, whatever the case may be. And then in 2018, we'll match up to $1,000. It goes down from 2015, 2016, 2017, where it reduces to $1,000 in 2018. So this is an incentive to get them on the program to help them, but it also helps the city in the fact that we're able to reduce our health care costs. Is that correct?
That's correct. Actually, it'll go down to a match for $1,000 for the employee only and $2,000 for the employee with dependents.
Okay.
So there'll be a tier there for the different plan.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I had a question on the other. I'm sorry.
Are we opening up for another round, apparently? Is anybody open to continue? We have time. We have only 5 council members, so we have 5 more minutes on this item.
So, Jamie, can you explain the revision on the domestic partner change? Because right now, previously, we had that provision in our personnel policy to accommodate those members of our city staff who were not able to get married, and so they could be accommodated by having that. And yet, in this policy, we're still retaining that definition?
No, we'd actually be going back to what we had before. You need to be married in order for the city to pay for your spouse. Now, there would also be a provision for domestic partner under the RCWs, which is 62 and older. You need to be registered with the state, but that domestic partnership hasn't gone away in the RCWs. So we would, and AWC will still recognize that. But they're changing their plans. So.
And forgive my ignorance of that, maybe it's because of my age. So is that for individuals who are choosing to remain unmarried because of their age, but they are in a committed relationship, and then they'll be able, okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I'm looking at attachment 3, which shows striked out language saying, which will no longer be relevant in the city. Relevant. Oh my goodness. Share the same regular and permanent residence, have a close personal and exclusive relationship, and be jointly responsible for basic living expenses. So that goes away, and we go back to the RCWs in legal.
Yes.
Great. Is there a motion on the floor to pass this as written, or no? Does anybody want to make changes?
I so moved.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Lamb, a second by Councilmember Agnew. Any discussion on the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, if everybody could place their vote. And if the clerk can display. Oh, so all in favor say, oh, it worked. Passes unanimously with Councilmember Sandberg and Spivey absent and excused. We are 3 minutes ahead of schedule. Thank you so much, Jamie. Nice to see you. Next item on the agenda is AB 14171. Don Feen with Utility and Development Services Manager is here to present a study session regarding Transportation Impact Fee Program update. Don?
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Don Feen, Utility and Development Services Manager. And there we go. Let's see.
Just blame the outdated technology. We're fixing that.
What I'm doing now.
We'll just take a 3-minute recess.
put your Laura's type her password. Mayor and council members, Don Feen, Utility and Development Services Manager. This is the presentation regarding the Transportation Impact Fee Program update. First of all, the need for the update. This program was previously updated in 2008 and then again in 2011. The Growth Management Act requires regular updates of the plan, and project construction costs have changed due to inflation and changes in the scope, and new projects have been added. The background and steps. First of all, developing a rate study. We selected Fear and Peers as our consultant, and there's a representative, Don Samdell, here tonight to answer questions if you have any. Determine a fee project list, determine growth estimates, determine trip generation rates for different land uses. Some of the things that transportation impact fees don't pay for are existing deficiencies, operating maintenance expenses, non-capacity related improvements like road overlays, pavement preservation, project on-site improvements, and standalone multimodal projects such as for transit, park and ride, bikes and pedestrians. So this chart shows where our 2011 program was based on, and then our proposed program. The project list in cost went up from $134 million to $162 million. Two less projects overall, and the costs are allowed to go over a period of 12 years, spread out over a period of 12 years. The actual impact fee revenues portion, the city growth portion, is gone up from $34.4 million to $41.2 million. And the average cost per PM peak hour trip, which is our basis, has gone up from $57.40 to $68.65 in the proposed plan. And this flow chart shows how everything comes together. The total applicable growth, city growth portion of $41 million, you divide it by the 6,000 number, and you get $68.65 as a cost per peak hour trip, and that's how it was generated. And then we apportion it to the different land uses. For a single-family house, the current fee is $54.81. Coming out of the new study, we have $64.94. And the other uses you can see here went up a similar amount. The proposed increase for the single-family is 18.5% increase. This shows you where the city of Bothell falls in the range of other jurisdictions for a single-family house impact fee. We're in the high middle range, below Sammamish, Kenmore, and Linwood, a little bit higher than Redmond, and then there's Kirkland, Bellevue, Woodinville, and Snohomish County and Issaquah. Some of these are updating their impact fees, especially we know Kirkland is right now, so that could change. With that, I'll leave it up to questions, and we have various staff here and our consultants. No actions required tonight. We will bring back the transportation impact fee ordinance to the council on December 2nd for approval and adoption.
Potentially. We'll see. I mean, it will come back. So when you go back to the last slide, Don, you showed a comparison of impact fees. How do we look and compare when you add all of the impact fees in? Because transportation does not stand alone. Do you have a chart that shows parks, transportation, schools, all the impact fees that are charged on a single-family residence.
I don't think we have it tonight. I imagine we could put that together.
Yeah, that'd be very helpful to get a whole picture to see how the city of Bothell stacks up as compared to these same jurisdictions that surround us. That would be helpful, because ultimately that is passed down to the home buyer, and it can be expensive for sure. So, and if we wouldn't mind jumping back, I think 3 or 4 slides, one of your first slides that you had. It's a ways back. Oh boy.
Another problem here.
I think it literally was the first one that you had. Or second. Okay, maybe the next. This one was saying which items were not included.
Okay.
So that's what surprised me, the last bullet point. Standalone multimodal projects such as transit, park and ride, bike and pedestrian projects. Mm-hmm. So meaning if we want to add a bike lane, transportation impact fees could not be used for that?
If it's just a bike lane, I believe that's true. I don't know if Don wants to jump in on that.
Good evening, Don Samdahl with Fair and Peers. The Growth Management Act uses the term streets and roads for eligible programs, and so, in fact, it would be allowed if you were, say, adding a bike lane on an existing street or a sidewalk, something urban standards. However, it's unclear if you were to, say, put a bike lane on a trail through a park, which is specifically for transportation impact fees.
Okay, so that's kind of the disclaimer of standalone then, potentially, that you wouldn't be able to have just a pedestrian trail, but you could have a sidewalk added to a road that's existing.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Anyone else on council questions? Councilmember Evans.
So, how do projects get on this list? The list on that's listed. There's 12 projects listed in here. So we have a lot of other transportation projects throughout the city. All right. So why do we have just 12 projects on here? How does a project qualify to get on this list, or what do they have to do?
They have to qualify as a capacity enhancing project. So they have to provide for growth. I believe it's only growth related. So.
And it's my understanding from using park impact fees that the impact fee can't be used for existing deficiencies. It can be only used for new impacts that is generated by whatever program is or building is being built. So whatever new impacts are related to that, that's what we base our impact fee on.
Right.
And impact fees don't cover the entire cost of a project. In other words, we don't charge 100% impact that project generates.
Right, and these totals that went from the $162 million of project cost to a $41 million that was the city growth-related portion of it, and then that's over 12 years, and then you may not collect that whole $42 million either. I mean, there's a good chance you won't. But
that's an estimate, then.
Yeah, right.
So. Through traffic is discussed on page 79, and that we supposedly get revenue from Snohomish County. This was, I think, the thing that's hard for the general public to understand about impact fees is we see all these new developments coming in, and the traffic gets worse. And we're always behind the schedule or the ball in getting, why don't the traffic improvements come before the projects and that type of thing. So I know that was a frustration that was expressed when we were talking about the Bothell Connector project and some of that it doesn't seem like these monies are being collected, but we're behind the ball on traffic. So, and then in here it makes reference to Snohomish County, the pass-through money from Snohomish County. So, is there a number of money that's been remitted to us from Snohomish County for the pass-through impacts of development out in the county?
I think I'll need some help on that one. I'm not sure if Eddie might. I think Eddie's stepping up on that one.
So for the question on the pass-through from Snohomish County, the city has an interlocal agreement with Snohomish County where these fees that we collect are then being assessed to the county that affects that transportation shed. So there's an interlocal agreement that every permit that Snohomish County issue within the transportation shed, which then, it's only what they call the service area F, which is really primarily South Snohomish County, that they would then pay a portion as they move further away from the city. Their impacts are less, so there's a reduction as they are further away from the city. So that's how we collect the impact fee through Snohomish County.
So then we actually do receive revenues from, they charge apply our fees to projects outside the county.
Absolutely.
And we do collect revenues from them.
That's correct.
So, and the pass-by trip adjustment, I guess I didn't understand that. So let's take Canyon Park shopping area as an example. And a new business comes in the old Albertsons building or whatever. So a lot of cars are already going by there. So how are their impact fees computed and charged on? How do you figure that out? How much is passed by and how much is new traffic generated?
Probably our technical person from Pierce and Pierce, probably Don. Can you help on that?
Yes. In fact, there are studies that have been compiled that actually count cars at the driveways of these different types of facilities. The best example would be like a fast food restaurant or something. And so a vehicle that is driving along and decides to stop there and just pulls in and comes out, technically that's a one trip in, one trip out, and those are then removed because they're not really creating a new impact on the street system. And the actual percentages that are reduced based on that are based on national studies. And it's a pretty high percentage for many of the retail and restaurant type uses.
Table 3 on page 78, if I was reading it right, gave the impression that there was, or at least the deficiency column, there was nothing in that deficiency column. So is there an explanation, or did I think it's on page 78.
So based on the analysis of level of service for the city's transportation plan, which is based on looking at average conditions in a corridor, all of the existing corridors are operating within the city's standards, so therefore there are no deficiencies using that definition.
Okay, that's most of my questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Other council members? Councilmember Ram.
So I had a question on that line too. It's actually illustrated too in the figure 2 on page, where are we here? 79. It says the investment needed to address existing deficiencies is 0. And so when we say corridors, do we mean the corridors that are in this list of projects that are eligible for impact fee?
There's, within the city's comprehensive plan and the transportation element, there's a number of roadway corridors identified, and it's those corridors that are used. And so the projects that are on the list for impact fees, if those projects are in a particular corridor, that's the level of service standard that we use.
Okay. So it speaks about the grand totals, 162 million, 41 million we'd get from impact fees, and there's 121 more million. I guess this is like a 12-year horizon that we're looking at. Where are we going to get $121 million? Or is this just kind of a...
Well, that would include grants. Of course, there's a lot of grants in transportation, so that's, that'd be a big portion of it. And local funding perhaps as well, but usually I think the percentage that they have on typical capital projects for transportation is somewhere between, is it 25% local and about 75%? Somebody else could jump in, but I mean the mix is something like that. I mean, as far as in our capital program, where it would come from.
So you're confident we can get that 121 million?
I think optimistically we hope so. That's what, these projects fall in line, at least for the first 6 years, along with our TIP and our CIP, and then the next 6 years are extending beyond that. But that would be the plan.
So this was brought up sort of by Councilmember Evans too. So how come 35th? Well, it would have been 39th, but now 35th. Why isn't that a corridor that's on here? Since there's significant pressures, I guess, potential pressures for development to occur out there, and then we're having a lot of pass-through traffic, according to the testimony we received a couple meetings ago.
So well, first of all, the impact fee needs to be financially reasonable. So the Bothell Connector, when we first looked at it, it was not financially feasible. Now I know the council is in the process of considering an alternate to that. So if that happens, then we will be bringing that project back, whichever that project is. We're hoping to phase it, so we'll be bringing projects in the future. And that means that we'll be able to look at which are the highest priority if that corridor has different phases. Just like 522, over the years, we've brought in phases of projects that are critical to that corridor. So once we have that decided as to the 35th corridor as an alternative or something equivalent to that, we'll be bringing that and bringing it into the TIP. Our 6-year transportation improvement program will then look at the financial feasibility and go after grants as well. And then the impact fee would be the other piece of the element that would then help fund those projects. So these projects that we currently have are in our CIP now, so that's how we kind of update it regularly as we looked at projects that becoming more critical to the corridor.
How often do we do the transportation impact fee rate study?
We've been, we show historically 2008 we did it, 2011, so we're bringing 2014, which likely in 2016 or 17 we could be bringing it up, but that's kind of the time frame we'll be looking at.
Okay.
So there is opportunity to start adding projects to it, but we need to continue to, kind of look at it, both within the next few years and then looking at the future as well, and then those get updated regularly.
Okay, I had one other question is on page 87. The projects identified as South State Route 527 South, and it's project group number D there. And then if you look down below the table, it's got another little table. It says D is SR 527 South, and it's $10 million bucks. And so I was just curious to what that is, what that project is. Or 10,807,000.
That table is a summary of the projects. If you go back to Table 1, which lists all of the projects, it identifies in the second column the impact fee group. So the one that you're referring to is, you said Group D, I believe?
Yeah, on page 87, it's Group D.
Yeah, so in essence, there are two projects that would be part of that impact fee group. One is the SR 527 widening from 240th Street to 228th Street, and 240th Street southeast at Meridian Avenue.
Oh, okay.
So it was the table at the end is just a summary of everything together.
Okay. And that was it. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Agnew? Anybody else want to go back through? It's nice to have time this evening. Huh. So, I'll just take another opportunity then. From July 1st, 2010 to the new suggested 68 to 65, that would be an 89% increase in basically 4.5 years. That to me is a massive increase in a fee, because I heard Eddie say that it needs to be a fair, reasonable fee. That seems like an unfair percentage increase, so I wouldn't be one that would be in favor of that significant of an increase. I think it needs to be fair and reasonable, as I heard. So that would be my concern as I look at all this. Yeah, I don't know if this is now the appropriate time, but I'll take it otherwise, because there's mention of the 39th Avenue connection. I did have an update, met with Terry Ryan from Snohomish County and two of his representatives last week to talk about the corridor. The county does not have any funds for that project set aside. Their preferred alternative, Terry's and the staff, seem to be the 35th option that is on the table, and that's one that they could contribute toward. They saw that coming up with $80 million for a project all at one time was impossible. I mean, they didn't laugh out loud, but basically that is impossible, $80 million to come up with a project at one time. What they liked about the 35th alternative is it could be done in sections. You could add a center turn lane at one time, then you could add sidewalks in the future, or you could do it in segments as you look down that corridor. So they were more in line with that, and there would be cost sharing certain portions of that project with the city, potentially down 35th until you reach a certain point. They could potentially share up to 50%. A couple of the intersections, they could share 0.25% or 0.75%, just depending on how it all lays out. So I thought that's something interesting to keep in consideration as we're continuing to look forward. They had concerns about going through the wetlands and the impacts that would have to the environment as well. So there you go. So since there were no further comments or questions on this is supposed to come back on December 2nd. Are you grabbing the microphone because you wish to say something?
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't want to cut anyone off. So I appreciate the presentation, and I do. I mean, to me, I'm very interested in seeing when it comes back how we line up in terms of fees with other jurisdictions as well, because I think it's important that we have not just on these fees, but on all of our fees in our schools and everything, because that's ultimately what's going to drive the costs of housing and what we have. So I'll look forward to that. I mean, I share the mayor's sentiment that this is a very dramatic increase over what we had before, and I think our housing market is certainly stronger than it was when we evaluated it the last time, but I don't think we want to, I don't necessarily think that we need to use that as a license to increase it to the maximum amount possible. So I'll look for those numbers relative to other jurisdictions, including school fees and park fees, et cetera, and kind of reserve my judgment for when that comes back.
Councilmember Evans.
I was interested in your comments, Mayor, because you obviously in your industry work with these costs quite a bit, and it sounds like a large number. So for every house that's built in the city, new house, do we get this would propose that we get a $6,500 fee from the developer for that house. Is that correct? Approximately.
From a single family.
Single family home, right. And so obviously that cost gets passed on to the homeowner as part of the purchase of that. But I'm sure there's a reason why the staff came up with that number. And, you know, there's a report here to support that. So while it's a large number, I want to make sure we as a council understand the basis of that. Cost of projects are going up, I guess, is certainly one of the major issues, but it seems like a significant increase. But I want to be sure that it's clear to the council why the staff is, the basis of why the staff has come up with that number as compared to the previous years and how that's gone up. So again, I know it's a number that you just didn't reach out of the air. There's a process you went to get there, so I want to make sure we understand that. It is a large number, but there's got to be a basis for why you came up with that number and what that will be. So I'll be interested in the information that comes back to us also.
Great. Yeah, for clarification, it's 18.5%, but from 2010, it's 89% of an increase in just that period of time. And we are not in a raging housing recovery by any stretch of the imagination. So,
Mayor, our staff, have we reached out to any of the developers to bounce these fees off of them and what their response is? Do we have any public input on this at all, or will we get some of that?
I don't believe we have. Eddie might.
No, we haven't. And that's why we're looking at comparables of cities to see where we're stacking. I'm pretty sure that the, master builders would probably will not be happy about it.
Right. I can imagine that.
We have to continue to invest, and so, like I say, there's the city portion of it on all those corridors, and so we're basically charging 25% of the total cost of those improvements if we are true to our adopted, capital facilities plan, and making sure that we're looking forward to that, to ensure that, improvements are there when the development occurs. So we have that to consider. So that's how we came up with this. And the cost is what the project costs are, and we have already engaged with the consultant to do the modeling to make sure we know what.
But I think that's one of the complaints, Eddie, that we heard from the public the other night was, the improvements don't precede the development. The improvements come way after the development, and many times they don't catch up. So it's a tough issue. So I don't know, what all the answers are, but that's why we have you expert staff to come up with those answers for us. So,
and that's why the GMA allows us to collect it and build it over time. Now, as you can tell, the existing level of service in terms of corridor are doing pretty good. So there is obviously spot improvements that a lot of folks are seeing that not been most of the time we think about commuting. When you get stuck in one intersection, you think that the whole thing has failed, but that's kind of the perception, and most drivers will consider that as, well, there's a problem there. But if they look at the commute on that corridor, it's not as bad overall.
And so we're asking that 25% of the cost of a project is coming from traffic impact fees.
That's correct.
So there's 75% cost that we're still looking for, and that's in grants and those types of things. But so the development's paying for 25% of their impact, or of the 100% impact, we're saying that 25% of it falls on them, or that they should pay for that, so.
And this is related to this new 6,000 new peak hour trips coming into the city in the next 12 years? Yeah. So projected to have 6 additional peak hour trips traveling in those corridors.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. So council is going to go in executive session for real estate matters in regards to potential purchase of property. We'll be in executive session until 8:20 approximately. So council is back in session. We are going to tackle AB 14171, which is a study session regarding the 2015-2016 biennial budget presentation. Our city manager, Bob Stowe, is with us to lead us through the discussion. Bob?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council. So I'm pleased to submit to you the 2015-2016 biennial budget. This budget was developed with the council's focus areas and your desired outcomes in mind, as well as the city's capital facilities plan, as well as our financial forecast. Tonight, my presentation will highlight and reiterate many but not all of the issues that are covered in the budget message, as well as in the 2015-2016 document. I want to first review with you the schedule, however, associated with the budget. Of course, tonight is the budget presentation. Immediately following, some general question and answer period has been devoted, covering really all matters of the budget. And then on November 18th, we'll have and schedule the public hearing regarding the property tax levies in both King and Snohomish counties, as well as the EMS levy in Snohomish County. Public hearing and council ordinance approving the utility rates, a resolution setting forth the 2015-2016 schedule, and again, a study session. And what I'm recommending is to focus on these areas within the budget: fire, police, public works, and community development. And then on December 2nd, we'll have another study session with, again, a question and answer period devoted towards departments of executive, finance, legal, human services, and other city funds. And we're scheduled, again, this is a schedule that was recently updated with council discussion earlier this evening, for December 9th. We'll have any follow-up discussions that's needed by then, and then the proposed budget adoption on that evening. So as a community, we have many accomplishments to be proud of, and together we have done the necessary work, I believe, to position ourselves for an exciting future. The city has exercised fiscal discipline and used creativity, its innovation, and a strong commitment to efficiency in order to maintain a healthy financial position while also providing stable municipal services. We did this all in spite of the Great Recession and the turbulent aftermath, which was the worst economic crisis that municipalities have experienced since the Great Depression. And all the communities can claim this achievement. We have a lot to be proud of in Bothell. At Council's July 8th, 2014 study session, you confirmed some specific goals for the 2015-2016 budget. These goals were provided in the form of budget focus areas and desired budget outcomes. Budget focus areas typically don't change from one biennium to the next because they are general themes that support the organization's long-term vision and mission over many years. However, the budget outcomes on it are much more specific, and their purpose is really to help advance those budget focus areas in the short term by identifying the highest priorities of the community by making these priorities really the drivers of the budget for this ensuing biennium. So the budget outcomes discussed previously with council include the following: wanted to continue to sustain the city's present service levels, continue to reestablish the city's minimum reserve level to 15% of the city's general fund expenses, and further support asset replacement levels, while in addition establishing strategies for reinstating pre-recession operating funding levels. Continue to limit the tax burden on Bothell citizens by seeking operating efficiencies whenever possible. Continue to utilize the city's 1% property tax levy increase as allowed by law to support existing service levels. Continue to improve development services initiatives, Development Service Initiative, DSI, to facilitate good development. Continue to create an active and vibrant downtown by implementing the actions established within the city's downtown revitalization plan. And then finally, continue to construct and maintain the capital investments as prescribed in the city's adopted capital facilities plan. This past summer, department directors were asked to submit their budget request in recognition of the City Council's budget focus areas and desired budget outcomes, along with the directives to limit maintenance and operations spending to 2% or less. Budgets were further refined, leading to the balanced budget proposed to you this evening. The key elements as a result of this include a proposed budget that sustains the city's current level of services, that anticipates a 13% reserve while responding to increased development, reinstates several positions, and adds additional maintenance personnel to sustain city services, includes a 1% property tax levy in both of those years, 2015, 2016, continues creation of an active and vibrant downtown, and includes the first 2 years of an adopted capital facilities plan. General fund revenues are forecasted at approximately $87 million during the 2015-2016 biennium. So let me back up and tell you a little bit about Bothel's proficiencies at achieving our community goals while providing excellent municipal services and maintaining what I believe to be a solid fiscal reputation. This is a result of our commitment, of which we consistently provide stable levels of services, prudent financial, operational, capital, and project management, sound short and long-term financial planning, strong credit ratings, 12 years without any financial audits or audit findings, award-winning financial reporting documents, award-winning budget documents, and award-winning capital facilities plans. So back to the general fund reserve. As I mentioned, our general fund reserves are forecast at approximately $87 million. The general fund relies upon three major streams to fund services: sales tax, property tax, and utility taxes. In 2015 and 2016, those revenue streams are expected to make up approximately 73% of the general fund revenues. As I mentioned earlier, the 2015-2016 budget relies on the increase in the city's property tax of 1% as allowed by state law. Over the biennium, a 1% property tax increase in 2015 and 2016 would provide approximately $300,000 of revenue to the city. For a home assessed at $300,000, a homeowner would pay an additional $4 a year in property taxes in 2015 associated with the 1% property tax levy. General fund expenses for 2015 and 16 are anticipated to match that of the revenue, $87 million. The two main general fund expenditure categories are 1, personnel, and 2, maintenance and operating expenses. The majority of the general fund expenses, as you can see from the slide or the graph on the right, are allocated between police and fire services. The city's three utilities, water, sewer, and stormwater utilities, are separate enterprise funds that need to be fully supported through user fees. And the utility rate increases that are necessary for 2015-2016 include in the water utility a 7.2% rate increase in 2015 and a 4% rate increase in 2016. In the sewer utility, a 5% rate increase in 2015 and a 4% rate increase in 2016. And finally, the service and the storm and surface water utility, no increase in 2015, but a 5% rate increase in 2016. So as we can continue to recover from the Great Recession, we have been challenged. The city's operating reserve reinstatement strategy is to designate one-time revenues toward reserves until our reserve goals are met. The 2013-2014 budget included a 9% general fund operating reserve, which amounted to approximately $3.2 million. The budget projects a 13% operating reserve, as I'd mentioned, that amounts to approximately $4.8 million. This figure includes $1.2 million that is anticipated to be added to the reserve during the 2015-2016 biennium. An additional $960,000 is needed to reinstate our 15% post-recession reserve goal. The current boom in development in Bothell that we are experiencing requires additional personnel to meet the established levels of services. So during the 2015-2016 biennium, as was the case in 2013 and 14, the city is using one-time development revenue to fund a higher level than normal staffing levels to meet that current demand. And for this reason, I'm recommending a 13% reserve for the 2015-2016 biennium rather than the 15% reserve, with the caveat that the excess revenues associated for one-time development or revenues are to be allocated to meet that funding gap of $960,000 until we reach that 50% reserve goal. The budget also transfers $1.9 million into the asset replacement fund in recognition of the future fleet expenses. The asset replacement fund is fully funded through year 2017. The 2015 and 2016 street budget was sufficiently funded by utilizing King County road taxes that Bothell received in 2014 in lieu of the property tax, as well as a subsidy from the general fund. But the King County monies were one-time funds and therefore really can't be relied upon to help budget or help balance any future budgets. This will be a significant issue that we'll need to address in the future. Washington communities which are struggling to find an appropriate level of maintenance for their roadway systems is not a new phenomenon. The elimination of the motor vehicle excise tax, for example, which happened in 1999, has now meant that it's been 15 years since Washington cities have had a designated source of funding for maintenance of their streets. As with most all budgets, there are known or future situations that have the potential to impact future city budgets. And I think the three known situations in Bothell include, or top three include, a regional fire authority. Through a public process, the City of Bothell, Woodinville Fire and Rescue, North Shore Fire Department, and the Snohomish County Fire Protection, TAN, are investigating both the advantages and disadvantages of creating a special district through a public vote. State law provides the framework, as you know, for establishing a regional fire authority in order to create efficiencies while still maintaining some local control. For regional fire authority in this area is found to be feasible and approved by those agencies that are part of the regional fire authority. The measure will be placed before the voters. Could be as soon as year 2015. The budget does include the Bothell Fire Department's 2-year allocation or 2-year budget appropriation. If the RF measure is placed before the voters during the 2015-2016 budget cycle and voters approve the measure, any remaining fire budget appropriation would be removed through the city's normal budget amendment process. Parks and Public Spaces levy tonight. Bothell residents are voting on the $42 million Parks and Public Spaces levy. The levy would fund 7 projects, which include the Park of Bothell Landing, East Norway Hill Park improvements, North Bothell Park acquisition and development, North Creek Field artificial turf, open space acquisition and development, Multi-Way Boulevard Phase 2, and Main Street enhancement and extension. The budget does not include any budget appropriation for these projects. Appropriation would be needed to be added to the city's normal budget amendment process after voters have weighed in and positively supported the measure. And finally, a solution to sustain the street budget will be a significant challenge and something that needs to be addressed by the city in the future. Over the last several years, the city's strong financial condition and prudent financial actions have allowed the city to deliver quality services during the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. The proposed budget projects a 13% general fund operating reserve that again amounts to $4.8 million. Budgets are not static documents and require timely and effective management in response to the ever-changing economic conditions. In fact, over the last several budget cycles, the city has needed to reduce its spending in order to correspond with available resources. The charts underscore the need to find a long-term solution for street maintenance. The continued practice of progressively absorbing more street maintenance costs through the general fund through subsidy is not a sustainable solution. I know that maintenance of our city's roadway system is an important element to all of us, and therefore I'm recommending that the street fund be a priority during this year's council's legislative retreat. we have much to be proud of in Bothell, and I am grateful for the dedication and service of all the city employees who work so hard to ensure that your local government operations are efficient and effective. Mayor and Council, I want to thank you for your leadership, and I look forward to discussing the proposed 2015-2016 budget with you.
Great. Thank you so much, City Manager. Very informative presentation. Anybody want to jump in with questions? Councilmember Evans.
Thank you for that presentation, City Manager. I got my copy of the budget, and I haven't gone completely through it, but I did go through the beginning information and had some just general questions. So during the recession, we had to cut back in many areas, utilize some of our reserves to operate. What is our operating revenues that we're operating on the city today? Where are we at? I think what I'm trying to ask, it's my understanding that our revenues are similar to what they were in 2008, and they haven't increased. In other words, we're operating on revenues that are quite a ways back based on how our costs have gone up. Does somebody have a general number?
Yeah, I'll let the finance director answer the question in terms of the revenue. Our revenues have increased, obviously, from one biennium to the next. We have asked departments in terms of the first part of your question. We did instruct departments to limit their operating and maintenance expenses to 2% or less from one biennium to the next in order to correspond with what we believe to be the available revenues that we would have to support our budget.
I guess I know we've lost a lot of revenue sources over the years through the different initiatives and things that have been passed by the voters and things. So I guess my question is, what basis of revenue are we operating on comparable to past years?
Well, it's really interesting because the revenues that we're utilizing today are not ones that we were utilizing in the past. The reason being that we put a lot of investment into our downtown, and we're seeing that pay off with one-time revenues. We're seeing permit revenues, construction sales tax revenues. At the end of this coming ensuing biennium, we'll start to see a transition period where we will go from these one-time revenues to ongoing revenues, and that's really where it's just an unknown. We would have to speculate at this point of what impact that is really going to have on utility tax, property tax, sales tax, those type of things. So we're really kind of covering the gap with one-time revenues. We're supporting DSI and the boom that's going on downtown and the extra work that is required with one-time revenues in order to support those staff that the city manager was discussing. As far as sales tax goes, we are ahead of the game. Compared to where we were at in 2009 after the recession got going. It took a little time for us to really see that downturn in sales tax, which it took us probably about 5 years really to come out of that. But it's not because we just waited and allowed the aftermath to take place, and then we just slowly came out of the woods. It's because we took action. There was a lot of strategy involved, and we invested in our downtown. And so what we're seeing is revenues that we've created as a city. Sales tax is going to continue to increase with the ongoing revenues. But again, right now, when you see our sales tax numbers that are meeting their mark or exceeding their mark, it's because it's one-time revenues. That we created those. So we've been able to do things that a lot of other people weren't able to do. In this biennium, we anticipate in 2015 that our property tax revenues are going to include almost $250,000 in additional revenues that are associated with new construction.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
And I guess I hope the general public understands that, we get so many requests to do things, whether sidewalks or road improvements and that type of thing. And the sources of revenue that we drew upon in the past just aren't available to us anymore. They've been taken away, and so we're having to find new areas to replace that revenue. And while we'd like to do more, the revenues just aren't there to do it. Those sources have been taken away by the various issues that have been voted on by the public and that type of thing. So,
and I would say that the fact remains that expenses continue to grow faster than our ability to collect revenues.
Yeah.
And that's a situation that's experienced across this country, and certainly it's something that we've been experiencing here in Washington State in the last decade.
Do we have a policy in the city that departments or services that can generate revenues do that? Do we require them to generate revenues to offset their costs versus departments who just provide services and have no revenue source? Is there a general policy or philosophy of that in the city?
Well, we do have sort of cost recovery models for development services, building permit services. In many cases, they bring in revenues far in excess of which we would then provide expenses or services back. Other departments can certainly become more entrepreneurial in terms of their approach to services to try to collect user fees for certain services. Recreation being one example where that's the case in this city as well as in other cities.
Right.
But there are many services that are simply relied upon through our general taxes and fees that citizens aren't necessarily willing to pay for. But there are those others that are discretionary that we can offer and then collect a fee for.
So I think I read in here somewhere that to cover 100% of the expenditures, we expect revenues to cover 100% of the expenditures, and it listed some of the services that we did that, but Parks and Recreation was not included in there as a 1% tax revenue as a general government expenditure. So just using that, so the Finance Department, IS, whatever the case, there's departments in the city who do not generate any revenue. And
that's correct. They're the internal service providers to the other departments, Public Works, Police.
But there are core, we have what we see as the core services of the city, the public safety and that type of thing, and that we're supposed to fund. But I guess I'm concerned that Parks and Recreation isn't one of our core services to a certain degree. In other words, it has to produce a certain amount of its income to operate as compared to some of the other departments in the city.
It does. It doesn't produce 100% of its own income,
right.
But it does more than other departments, certainly, but by the nature of its business.
There was also a statement in here of the landscape service in the right-of-way went from 25,000 square feet in 2014 to 105,000 square feet in 2015. At some point, I would be interested in seeing how that breaks down. What are those new areas that have been added and where they're at and that type of thing. So
okay.
At some point, if the staff has that would be interesting to see that. Let's see. 83% of our budget is salaries and benefits and that type of thing. And a breakdown of those costs was mentioned in here as salary and merit steps, pension contributions, health insurance premiums, and staffing ads. I'd like to see, if possible, a breakdown of that 83%, how it breaks down into these various categories that were listed in the information, if that's available too. It would be helpful to see that. Then also in the CFP, it mentioned that there's funding in there allocated for landscape acquisition, facility, parks, transportation, utilities. I'm sure we've got this, or probably had it when it came to it, and the CFP came to us. But how that CFP breaks down as far as costs for land acquisition, costs for facilities, parks, transportation, utilities, whatever the case may be, what the percentages are in the CFP for those different areas here. I'd be interested to see that. And one last comment, in the information provided in the budget. It also made reference to the 1% increase in property tax would generate about $100,000 per year of compounding revenue. But over the biennium, we estimate $300,000. So and you made reference to that a little bit in your statement. So what's the difference between that $100,000 and $300,000 figure from the 1% increase in property tax?
You mentioned it's just the compounding effect of 1% levy on top of another 1% levy.
Okay, so we generate about $100,000 each year, but that's going to compound or grow through over the biennium. So that's how we allocate the $300,000. Okay, thank you. Those are the only questions I have now. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Evans. Next, Councilmember William. Oh yeah, I think the record will show Councilmember Sandberg arrived at 8:42. Welcome. Do you want to go?
I actually don't have any questions at this time.
You were just wanting to recognize she showed up? Okay.
No questions.
No? Do you?
I don't have any questions, but I have some comments if we're moving into that.
Sure. Go for it. And Councilmember Sandberg. Councilmember Evans just finished, so you might be up next.
So I just wanted to say thanks to our city manager and to our finance director for the work that they've done on this budget proposal. You know, I think it's sometimes we can get into the weeds of different items and sort of lose the broader perspective of what the story of this budget is. And the reality is there's not a municipality in the state of Washington that has been more competently managed or has survived the economic downturn than the city of Bothell. It was alluded to a moment ago that the vast majority of our budget is in personnel and in labor costs, and that's true. And those are the people who serve our community. Those are our firefighters, those are our police, those are our public works employees who do incredibly important work for our citizens. I think that it's really important for the public to understand the way our city has been operating fiscally and the way we are going to be operating fiscally, because I think we've had some rhetoric that has been, quite frankly, completely wrong about our citizens and about our city and about our finances. And I think that's really destructive when we have people, particularly elected officials, engage in rhetoric that doesn't reflect reality, that denigrates the people who work for our city, and that denigrates our city itself. And I think that's something that we need to call out. That's not being negative, that's simply being realistic about it. The reality is, as you alluded to in your presentation, every single city in this country, and particularly in this state, as well as our state governments and national governments, has a challenge with infrastructure in terms of roads, bridges. It's not unique to the city of Bothell. It's not even unique to the United States of America. It is a extraordinarily expensive problem. We're addressing that. We're putting more money towards our infrastructure. We're also recognizing that if you take a philosophy that the city should just sort of stay static, that nothing should change, and that Bothell's, going to sit where it is, we're not going to do any development any further, the only way to do that then is to raise taxes by an overwhelming amount on the existing people who live in our city. And make no mistake about it, that really is a choice. Is either you grow our city, you grow our economy, and you grow the development that we have in our city, and that includes our public education, both higher and primary, or you watch the city decay and try to raise taxes on a fewer number of people. I think that that isn't the path that we want to take as a city. I think that we want to take the path that we have outlined, which is fiscally responsible, which invests in those infrastructure activities that will bring more economic activity into our city and will make our residents' lives better. And I during the past kind of campaign season of this year, I've just been sort of watching some of the rhetoric, and I've been watching some of the things that have been said about our city, and I did so very quietly. I didn't really engage in the back and forth of that debate very much because I didn't think it was appropriate. But I think as we go into this budget cycle, we really do need to have a very frank and very honest conversation about where we're headed as a city. And I think those people who are purporting to say the city's falling apart or I want to do that, I think we need to see the tax proposal that they're talking about. I think we need to see the budget proposal that they're talking about. I think we need to see exactly what specific proposals and money matches the ridiculous rhetoric that's been passed off to our community, because it doesn't reflect the hopes and aspirations of the city of Bothell, and it doesn't reflect well on the outstanding leadership that we've seen in this city over the past decade.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Sandberg?
Well, I just got here 4 minutes ago, and I missed the presentation, so I just have some general comments, and then I'll be asking specific questions of staff before the next meeting as well. So these are just some general comments. So when I read the introductory statement, the one thing that I was looking for in this overview document is a greater historical perspective, where we've been, where our budget has been in years past, in comparison to where we are now. So in the tables, we have information that goes back to the 11-12 biennium. So there's 11-12 biennium, then the 13-14, and now the 15-16 projected biennium. And I feel that it is really informative to understand our history of our budget, to know where our future lies, and to understand the trends that we've seen in the past several years, not just in the last couple of bienniums. Biennia. And so what I was hoping to see is some more graphical representation of, like, what have our revenues been over time? What have our expenditures been over time? What are the trends? What are the, if there are, peaks and valleys, what are the explanations for those anomalies? And I don't really get that that richness in this overview. So when I was at the AWC Municipal Finance Conference in the summer, the Redmond finance director, he showed some of the examples from the Redmond budget, and I thought, wow, that would be really helpful to see those kind of trends. So maybe I can talk with Tammy or Bob and, look at, for example, another city like Redmond and what they did and why it was informing. So the other thing that when I read the overview was, I didn't, not that I'm expecting to hear negative information. Obviously, you want to promote the city, but I'm looking at the budget like maybe we should take a SWOT approach. Look at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and then threats or challenges. And I just didn't get that feeling in the document, in the overview. It was like, everything's great. And I know that we have strengths and we have weaknesses and we have opportunities and we have threats. And I think we should see them. I don't think that the budget document should all be positive. I did see the one challenge, which was the roads. But I don't know. I think that there should be more information about that. I mean, when I think about this year and this year's capital facility plan, this is sort of a watershed year for us because we have probably incurred more debt this year than any time in our history. And I see that as a challenge. I see that as something to address, and I didn't see that in the budget. And so I would like to see more historical information. I would like to see more information about how we're going to pay the debt in the future. There's just very, very limited information in there. And I don't know if you talked about it in your presentation, but we have several positions that are being asked to be added, and I didn't see that there was a lot of justification for those that was written in the document. So maybe I didn't get deep enough in the document to see all that justification. But for example,
specifically, this is the perfect time to specifically ask about each
so
one of those
like there was we're doing a community development department reorganization. I mean, that's what's proposed, and I didn't know why are we reorganizing the community development department? Because when I've looked at the budgets in the past, the community development department has stood out to me in the past as being one of the most stable departments in terms of personnel costs. And so I thought, wow, why are we reorganizing the community development? So sure, if you want to take that time.
Well, the Community Development Department definitely expands and contracts based on what's going on in the community. Anytime you're going to have growth, you have to expand, or your level of service is going to be reduced. So you have to make that choice. And so what's happening in this budget cycle, what is being proposed is to add staff, reorganize the staff very minimally in order to function at a higher level, in order to meet the city's DSI standards. And that would continue until this boom that we're seeing of construction in this city it goes back down to something more normal. So you're always going to see within community development that fluctuation, and sometimes what it means is you don't have enough people, and you have to, and then you're adding people, and then you add them, and then the workload reduces. So it always is going to do this. This biennium, what you're seeing is this, and it'll probably go on for the next 2 bienniums. But those staff members are specifically strategized to bring about the positive results for DSI and to maintain the standards that we have in place while the business level that they're working with is elevated.
So when I hear reorganization, I'm thinking that there's change in management, maybe function from one department is being moved over to another department. But what I'm hearing from you is that it's not a reorganization; it's an addition of positions to deal with the increased workload,
as well as some minor reclassification from one position to another position. So span of control, or making sure that the roles and duties of one position is actually matching their job description. So they're very minor reorganizations. They're not merging departments together. And you referenced the budget message in the overview, and that's really all it is an overview. It's not meant to get into the detail. The actual document gets into a little more of that detail, and then we hope to rely upon the discussion with council in the next several weeks and months to get further in that detail that's not presented in the budget document itself.
Okay. And then I'm not really sure what transpired before I got here.
Just Bob did the presentation,
right.
and Bill spoke, so you heard the rest.
Okay, and so we do. I would agree that the staff does a terrific job, and all cities have suffered during the Great Recession, but we have made choices. The council and the city have made choices, and some of those choices affect our ability to provide other levels of service throughout the city. And I read today in the business section, I was very interested in this article about the One World Trade Center and how the One World Trade Center had its opening day yesterday. And this building is, it is billed as the most secure office building in America. It is an engineering feat. And what struck me is this sentence. The space is at the top of the global price range at $69 per square foot below the 63rd floor. It's a 104-story building. So it's at the top of the global price range of $69 per square foot. And I think it's always good to put everything in perspective. That's why I asked about the history of our where we've been with the budget, with revenues and expenditures in the past. Because if you will remember, our City Hall, its lease rate, when calculated out, is $66.50. And here we're talking about the World Trade Center renting at $69 per square foot. And so we have made choices, and the choices that we have made can make our jobs more difficult. And that is the way I perceive it, and if there are other council members that perceive it, that is our choice to perceive it, and to bring up information like that.
Mr. Mayor, if I might yield, if I could interject for a moment.
Well, are you finished with your comments?
He may interject if he would like.
So it's once been said that we're entitled to our own opinions, but not entitled to our own facts. And I think that the analogy that was just made to the World Trade Center and that pricing is not an apt one, and it's not really a matter of perception. It really is kind of a matter of fact. One of the tools of rhetoric that's been used throughout this discussion on our City Hall has been to conflate a building cost with a site cost as well as parking costs, and I think that's a mistake. I think to say that the price per the building itself is analogous with the price of the entire site, including underground parking, I don't think that's an apt analogy. The other thing that I would say is I would invite those who have said, and I know Councilor Rayam said that I think the city is falling apart everywhere. I think if you believe that, you're right. We make choices. I'd like to see the Councilmember Sandberg tax and spending proposal. I'd like to see the Councilmember Rayam tax and spending proposal to address these broad deficiencies that you perceive in the way that our city has been run for the last 10 years. Because every single comment that Councilmember Sandberg made was stylistic. It was, I don't see this in the way that the budget is arranged. I don't see enough narrative. I don't see enough history. The budget is not a poem. It's not prose. It's not a short story. It is effectively a document that directs how money is spent. So if you have specific ways you'd like to spend money differently or taxes you'd like to levy differently,
I need a motion.
I'm all ears. I'll move to extend 10 minutes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. So it passes to 5-1.
So, again, I think it is important to have a good discussion. It's also important to have a substantive discussion. And, we can continue to argue over decisions that have been made in the past. Frankly, I view the way the city of Bothell is developing as quite positive. I haven't heard people tell us, I wish the downtown were moving in a different direction, or I'm unhappy with that development. So I think if you look at the budget document and see a deficiency and wish to spend money differently or tax differently, those are comments that we can then debate and discuss. To kind of endlessly go back and say, well, I wish I saw this, or I wish I saw a different comment or a different narrative, that isn't substance. That's really just rhetoric. So I'm curious and excited to see the substantive proposal from Councilmember Sandberg and from Councilor Rayum to address what they see as the deficiencies in our city.
Well, I'd like to respond. First of all, I'm not engaging any tools of rhetoric. That lease rate is a given factual piece of information compared to a factual piece of information from an Associated Press article. So I'm not using a tool of rhetoric. Stylistic issues, I like to get my stylistic issues in early because I had the same questions about capital facility plan, and I was told that there was not enough time to make any kind of changes. So I'm asking for these stylistic changes early so that we can have that information to inform decisions throughout the document. We received our 444-page budget and our 106-page packet on Friday after 5. I had asked the city manager previously that when we were going to receive the budget, if we could receive it maybe a week in advance so that we could get down into the substantive nuts and bolts on the asks. I haven't been able to do that. But I will be getting to doing that. It doesn't necessarily involve a tax and spending proposal on my part. But I will be giving you more than just stylistic requests, but I'm asking for those now so that there is plenty of lead time to provide that, because I realize that that takes some time.
Anyone down here? Councilmember Rayum.
So, since I've been called out by name, I just want to say I'm not interested in engaging in a negative conversation. Just because one council member doesn't agree with what I have to say or the way I feel about the hometown in which I grew up in, that's too bad. My opinion is my opinion, and I stand by it. I'd like to know how. Anything that I said was insulting to the staff members of the city. I do think that there has been decisions made, and there's a lot of cities around here that have taken a different path. And I've looked at those cities as I've grown up and have been envious of what they have, and I want that for my hometown. And I won't sit here for 1 second and say, oh, I feel really bad for it. I'm not going to pretend like I have the capability or capacity to propose a spending and savings or a tax package that I think should be adopted by this council. I don't have the resources to do such things. So I'm just going to leave it at that. If you want to engage in a conversation, I would recommend not being negative right out of the gate and calling names and insulting people, because I'm not interested in pursuing those conversations.
Okay. So it's my opportunity to speak now. So I think it is fair when any council member goes out and says something negative about their city in the Seattle Times, and it's publicized, for any other council member who loves the city as much as you do, Councilmember Rayum, to bring that up as a subject at a council meeting. So if our city's put in a negative light, that needs to be talked about, and I think that's fair. No names were called. I didn't hear that. It's an honest debate, and as we move forward, it will continue to be an honest debate that we need to talk about the facts that are before us. So a fact in regards to the city falling apart and that being used as a sentence that was published in the Seattle Times. It was funny because at the same time that article came out, I was so busy doing ribbon cuttings throughout the city, joined by a couple council members that are up here and the city staff. And it was a time of celebration. And so that those type of comments that come out during that time is just wondering which city we're all raising ourselves in for a lifetime. I've been here for 41 years and watched the city take steps in growth moving forward. Those ribbon cuttings were interesting. I was down at the Bothell Landing with a lot of people from our community and communities around the state that would come here. We had people representative of the governor of the transportation department. We had King County representatives, Snohomish County representatives. We had county council members, city council members, and so on, recognizing the amazing strides that the city of Bothell has made over the last 10 to 12 years. And they have been amazing. As I look at the new realigned 522, that came from an idea of a citizens advisory board that said, you know what, there's something that can be done better. And there were naysayers in the city that said that plan will never happen. Well, it's happened with a significant investment, and it wasn't something that just happened by stance, but there was lobbying literally in D.C. to make that project happen. And here we are today with a realigned 522 that goes through a city. And you know what's amazing, it came at a time when we needed it most, when a toll went on 520 bridge, and we were going to see an increase of traffic throughout our city. If we didn't take the leadership and time to move that project forward, we would be facing potentially worse traffic problems. So what we've seen is new sidewalks, new roads, new bike lanes, new bus lanes. So in that sense, that project is not showing signs of our city falling apart. It's showing a park that has doubled in size with the park at Bothell Landing, which is the heart of our city. It's where our city can gather during community celebrations, and my family's certainly been down there a lot of times as we celebrate each other. Events and just enjoying a good time. We can walk up to the slough or Sammamish River and enjoy looking into it. Because the park is what it is, we hope that there were better results for election tonight or ballot measure tonight, so we could see the improvements that we've already made continue. But there were forces in the city that put misleading information out there about that measure, which is disappointing, because ultimately it's my love for the city. And I don't think that that vision will die. That vision will continue, and I will see that to fruition one way or the other as I sit here within my powers. Also, another ribbon cutting was to recognize the improvements that happened at Wayne Curve. The traffic that goes through there flows so much better than it used to be for the so many years that I lived here, for the last 38 years before that project was in place. New sidewalks, new sidewalks, new bus lanes, new lanes that lead all the way to our neighbor in Kenmore. Those are beautiful lanes that will be there through our lifetime. That's yet another representation of our city not falling apart. Then I look at the boulevard, see a new section of the boulevard built in front of Six Oaks, a beautiful investment brought in downtown. In fact, we put $100 million of investment in downtown. We've seen about $200 million already reinvested in the city from outside investors. That's incredible. That's unfathomable. That is not happening in the state, to the point that the city manager and I are invited to speak in different locations in our state to talk about what we're doing in the city of Bothell, because it is so incredible of what the majority of this council is doing to move forward. In regards to future or further improvements, I did another ribbon cutting at Country Village, and those improvements all the way from 240th up to 228th added 2 lanes, a center turn lane, 2 bike lanes, 2 sidewalks, and a traffic light. So I am just beyond measure to understand however a public comment could go out saying that our city is falling apart. We have placed so much investment in downtown, and it is returning the investments back. If it was just money put forward that was not returning investment, we could ask questions, but ultimately we'll see over $400 million reinvested in downtown. So yes, this will be an honest discussion. We will not call names, but if negative comments are put out there, those have to be addressed, because it's putting a bad light on the city, which I refuse to let continue. So we are at 9:09. We extend to 9:10. So in about 10 seconds, I will adjourn this meeting. Is there any further items for the good of the cause? We are adjourned.